Hello and welcome back to F1 Isn't Real. I am your host, Ben Wevel, 2024 inductee of the Terrible Prediction Hall of Fame, joined by my boy Amesh, aka V1. And today, in the first race week of the F1 year, we are unpacking our picks for the 2025 driver lineups and, depending on how much we get done, previewing this weekend's Australian GP. Amesh, how's it going?
Hi Ben, thank you for having me again. It's going great. I'm excited to get the 2025 predictions underway.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's start with the simplest one of them all to unpack. Charles Leclerc, Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari. Amesh, what do you think this partnership's going to look like in 2025?
I think it's a tricky one to say, Ben, because Charles Leclerc has been Ferrari's number one driver for a while now. Ever since 2019, he has been leading the team. And to have a seven-time world champion, Lewis Hamilton, come into Ferrari, might be some changes to the dynamic of the team, and I'm interested to see which way it will affect Ferrari. I think with such a strong driver pair, it's expected the team to have some sort of success, but at the same time, these two drivers they are so highly ranked in F1, it could create a potential clashing, and I'm interested to see how these two will work together next year.
Yeah, I think Charles Leclerc has been fiending for a chance or a shot at the World Championship for quite some time now, and Lewis Hamilton, in that same way, is almost in the mindset of a rookie nowadays. He's a couple of years out from his last World Championship, and you can tell from interviews, from his frustration at the Mercedes package, that he wants a shot at that eighth World Championship without a shadow of a doubt. Um, and in his eyes, sort of reclaiming that 2021 championship was um according to himself, Toto Wolff, Mercedes unjustly taken away from him. um I think that there will be conflict, certainly on the racetrack, but I think that, considering the quality and the maturity of both of these drivers, I think it likely won't extend too far into the media. um but there could be flashpoints. There could be moments where the two come together. For something like, if we look at the example of obviously Rosberg and Hamilton, and Leclerc obviously has probably been somewhat frustrated to be on par with Carlos Sainz these last few years. Carlos, of course, taking the victory in Britain, in the Great British Grand Prix last year. I mean, I'm sure that sort of ruffled his feathers a bit. He was obviously heavily put in a poor position by the strategy choices of Ferrari. So I can imagine that, both of these drivers are looking for a real shot for ultimate glory. But I hope it doesn't get too feisty, because I think that could really paint both of these drivers in quite a bad light. But now moving on to Red Bull Racing. Amish, what is your choice for their 2025 lineup?
So it's obvious that Max Verstappen is locked in for 2028, and I think the partner and teammate that Red Bull might give him will be Carlos Sainz.
I
I
agree.
think
I agree. That's my prediction as well.
Carlos Sainz has been part of the Red Bull family before. He's been teammates with Max Verstappen before. The two drivers definitely get along. And I think they're both very skilled. I think Carlos Sainz, if anyone, it'll be him who will be able to keep up with the likes of Max Verstappen in the 2025 season. And I think Red Bull will definitely be having an eye on him.
100%. Oh, we're on the same wavelength today. I promise you that we have not shared our lists. These are completely independent of one another. Um, yeah, I see Carlos having a pretty insane year. Not, I mean, obviously not sort of fighting with the Red Bulls on a week by week basis, but I see him in a solid, stead for a sort of third place. I think he bests Charles Leclerc this year. Um, and I think he really proves himself to F1 that he is a desirable commodity rather than the spare of the duo of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Um, yeah, and I think he snatches that Red Bull drive because I think, Perez, I think he's just going to be the number two driver this year. And frankly, what Red Bull want is, or I'm sure what Max Verstappen wants is a challenger. And I think Carlos Sainz could pose that. In terms of contract length, I think it will likely be a short-term deal. I think 1 to 2 years maximum. I would say I would tend on the side of sort of a 1 year prove it deal, where Carlos sort of has to earn his stripes at Red Bull. Um, and also, I think this comes with a little bit of uncertainty because, of course, Carlos Sainz has been in the system before. He's fell somewhat foul of it. Obviously, had to move across to Renault. Um, but yeah, I would say this could be a match made in heaven for Red Bull. Um, but now on to the team that's looking like a sort of upper midfield to mid-midfield team this year. Mercedes. This is a super tricky one to gauge. Russell probably locked in. Amish, who are you going for that second seat?
I think this driver has shown a lot of potential to be in when he's in a fast car. I think if a team like Mercedes is to produce a fast car, this driver will definitely be able to perform. He's performed in the past, and I'm going to go with Fernando Alonso.
Wow. Fernando Alonso.
Yep.
Do you want to give some justification there? That is a crazy
Yeah.
move.
So I think Toto Wolff has been speaking to Fernando Alonso in the paddock, and I think it's about time Alonso deserves a faster car. And I think in the next up and coming years, Mercedes will be a lot more promising in the future. And I think what better driver to deliver than Fernando Alonso?
Mm. This is an interesting one. I've gone in a bit of a different direction from
Who
you,
do you
and
go for, Ben?
I've gone for Alex Albon
Wow,
in
that's interesting.
yeah.
I think I would put Alex Albon after Fernando Alonso as well. I was thinking him, but
I'm
I think isn't
thinking
he locked in with his
he's locked
contract
in,
at
but
the
I
moment?
think that Mercedes of all teams could, whip up some contract chicanery and get Albon out of that deal for a seat at Mercedes. I don't think Williams would hold him back if Mercedes sort of offered him a drive. Um, as in Alex Albon is a driver who sort of in a similar way to George Russell has thrived at a super underperforming team. I think the start of this year has been a bit slow. It's probably because Williams aren't in as good of a position as they were last year. But I think Alex Albon has really proved his yeah, I think he's shown a level of maturity as a driver that wasn't there at Red Bull in his formative years. Um, I think he's shown that he can take the reins at a team, but I think he's also shown that he doesn't do that with force. So as George did at Williams, there was never any spite between him and Nicholas Latifi, and in the same way, I don't think there's any spite between Alex Albon and Logan Sargent. Alex Albon is of course the superior driver. Um, and I just think that he would be a great fit. George and Albon, of course, excellent friends. And I think that, you put him in that Red Bull as he came into the sport. I think that was a bad decision. He's had a couple of years to really develop as a driver. And now I think looking to the future, he could be an option for, a contender within the next 5 years.
I 100% agree with you, Ben. I think that's a brilliant decision, a bold decision, but I think it's also suitable.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see Albon get another opportunity in a top team because I think he really deserves it. But now on to McLaren. Um, I think this one's pretty clear cut as well. Amesh, what are you thinking?
Well, I think nothing's changing in the McLaren team. I think Norris and Piastri, first year together was last year, and I think they proved themselves to be a dynamic duo. I think out of all of the drivers in the 2023 season, uh, Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri definitely proved that they were the strongest duo. Even if they didn't have the fastest car, they were always consistently together. There wasn't that much of a gap between them. And I think as drivers, they definitely got along well and they respected each other. You can see there was a bit of pressure on Lando Norris when Oscar Piastri was performing really highly towards the end of the season. And I think that does nothing but help Lando improve as a driver because he knows there's more to lose at this point. So I think going into 2024 season and next season, there's a lot of hope for the McLaren team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I definitely Piastri and Norris is my choice as well. Um, but I think Norris is slowly getting frustrated by McLaren. He's been there for what is it, entering his fifth or is it sixth season now? I mean, he's been at McLaren for a long while, and I think he wants to challenge, like in the same way as Carlos does. I think he wants to challenge, but I think you know, sort of. Uh, um, in a different way to Carlos. He doesn't have the same. He is more, I think, of an immature driver behind the wheel, and he can let his emotions get the better of him at certain points. And I think that they could, he and Piastri could come to blows at some point this year, but I'm hoping that everything keeps clean on track. But yes, 2025, they're both locked in, both with big contract extensions up until possibly the end of 2027 for Lando and 2026 for Oscar. So I think they're both there for at least a reasonable while. Now on to Aston Martin. Amesh, you've already said that Alonso is moving on to the Mercedes seat. Who is replacing him?
I'm going to be bold again and say a driver who is not expected to go to this team, but I think a driver that's heavily underrated. I'm not sure whether they'll fully thrive in this new environment, but I think it's more of a silly season option
Mm,
for Aston Martin. So I'm going to go with Nico Hülkenberg.
mm,
Yeah,
Nico Hülkenberg. Mm, qualifying merchant. Um, I'm not sure if he'll. I think he's a bit of a snobbish F1 driver. I think he's going to become very, very quickly frustrated by having Lance Stroll as his partner. Um, and just sort of the increased pressure that comes with being an Aston Martin driver. Lawrence Stroll has these expectations. Um, Nico Hülkenberg though is a, he's waning. He's in the last sort of stage of his career, but I think he could still, on his day, make a challenge for the podium. Definitely in that Aston Martin car. So I think it's a pretty great decision, to be honest with you. I could definitely see Nico Hülkenberg back in the car that was it where he started. No, he started at Force India. Did he start
I
Force
think
India?
he started at Williams.
Williams. Yeah,
I think,
so oh yeah, you're right. So Williams, and then he was in the Force India for was he in the Force India? Yes, he was for a couple of
yeah,
seasons. And but yeah, and then off to Renault. But yeah, I could see Nico Hulkenberg sort of slotting in nicely. He's, the infrastructure, the relationships are there already. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure how well he's going to click with Lance Stroll. But yeah, I've gone for Alonso and Stroll as well. I think Alonso probably is going to take, one or two more seasons. I don't know if Alonso on his day can do amazing things, but I don't know if he's going to be the choice for Mercedes, who I think they're looking for somebody. I'm not saying Alonso doesn't have the competitive edge. I'm saying that I think they want somebody hungry, like deeply hungry for another championship for their first championship. And I think Albon provides that in a way that Alonso might not anymore. And I think that's the where the trepidation lies